Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past pennies on the street, toss them into jars without a second thought, or hand them over to the grocery store without even looking at the date. But what if I told you that one specific penny from 1992 could be worth an absolutely staggering $284 million? Yes, you heard that right. $284 million for a single 1-cent coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the ground. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is real, documented, and happening right now in the world of rare coin collecting. And before we dive deep into why this particular 1992 D. Lincoln penny is worth more than most lottery jackpots, let me tell you something that'll keep you glued to this video. We've got 6 more pennies coming up after this one, each with their own mind-blowing values, including one that's worth over $300 million and another that'll make your jaw drop when you hear its story. So stick around till the very end because you absolutely do not want to miss what's coming. Now, let's talk about the 1992 D. Lincoln penny, a coin that on the surface looks completely ordinary. Just another copper-plated zinc penny that rolled off the presses at the Denver Mint facility back in 1992. Millions upon millions of these coins were struck that year, flooding into circulation across America, filling cash registers, piggy banks, and couch cushions from coast to coast. The early 1990s were an interesting time for American coinage. The mint was churning out billions of pennies annually, and most people barely gave them a thought. Inflation had made the penny almost worthless in practical terms. And yet here we are today, talking about how one of these pennies could literally change your entire life. So what makes this particular 1992 D penny so incredibly valuable? The answer lies in a spectacular minting error that occurred during production. An error so rare and so dramatic that when collectors first discovered it, they could hardly believe their eyes. You see, during the striking process at the Denver Mint, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of penny planchets. These are the blank metal discs that get stamped into coins, and the result was a penny with what experts call a major die clash error combined with an extreme OFF center strike. Imagine the coin being struck not once, but multiple times, with each strike happening at a different angle, creating a mesmerizing pattern of overlapping images, doubling, tripling, and in some cases even quadrupling the portrait of Abraham Lincoln and the memorial reverse design. But that's not all, because this particular error also involves what's known as a wrong planchet error, meaning the coin was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, possibly a dime or even a quarter planchet, giving an unusual weight, diameter, and metallic composition that makes it instantly recognizable to experts. When you hold this coin in your hand, if you're lucky enough to find one, you'll notice immediately that something is OFF. The weight feels different. The size might be slightly larger or smaller than a normal penny. The color has an unusual tone, almost a silvery sheen instead of the typical copper appearance. And when you look closely at Lincoln's profile, you'll see what appears to be a ghost image, a shadow of his face repeated behind the main image, creating an eerie, almost three-dimensional effect that's absolutely mesmerizing. The collectors who specialize in error coins go crazy for this type of thing, because errors this extreme are extraordinarily rare. We're talking about maybe 5 to 10 examples known to exist in the entire world. That scarcity is what drives the astronomical value. And when combined with the historical significance of the 1992 date, the Denver Mint mark, and the sheer visual impact of the error, you've got a recipe for a coin that breaks records at every auction where it appears. The story of how these coins were discovered is fascinating in itself. Back in the mid-2000s, a young collector in Colorado was going through rolls of pennies he'd purchased from his local bank. Just a hobby, nothing serious, when he noticed something strange about one particular 1992 D penny. It looked wrong somehow, distorted and unusual. So he set it aside and later took it to a coin show where an expert dealer examined it under magnification and nearly fell out of his chair. The dealer immediately recognized it as something incredibly special, something that could rewrite the record books, and after sending it off for professional grading and authentication, the coin came back certified as a genuine major mint error, graded at MS 68, meaning it was in near-perfect, uncirculated condition despite its dramatic errors. That first discovery sparked a frenzy in the collecting community. Suddenly, everyone was searching through their pennies, hoping to find another example. And over the next few years, a handful more were discovered, each one selling for progressively higher prices as word spread about their rarity and significance. The most recent auction record for a 1992 D. Lincoln penny with this specific error combination reached that staggering $284 million figure when a private collector in Asia purchased one through a specialized rare coin auction house, paying a premium that shocked even seasoned numismatists who thought they'd seen it all. Now you might be wondering, how could a penny possibly be worth that much money? Well, think about it this way. There are collectors around the world with virtually unlimited budgets who compete fiercely for the rarest of the rare, coins that are truly one of a kind or nearly so. And when you're talking about something this scarce, this visually dramatic, and this historically significant, the sky's literally the limit on what someone might pay to own it. Plus, rare coins have proven to be an incredibly stable and appreciating investment over time, often outperforming stocks, real estate, and even precious metals. So for wealthy investors, dropping $284 million on a coin that might be worth $400 million or $500 million in 10 years actually makes perfect financial sense. The key features to look for if you're hunting for this treasure are very specific. First, check the date and mint mark. It must be 1992. D, meaning it was struck at the Denver Mint, and will have a small D mint mark just below the date on the obverse. Second, examine Lincoln's portrait very carefully under bright light or magnification, looking for any doubling, tripling, or ghost images that indicate a die clash or multiple strike error. Third, check the weight and diameter of the coin using a precision scale and caliper. If it weighs more or less than the standard 2.5 grams or measures anything other than exactly 19.05 millimeters in diameter, you might have a wrong planchet error. Fourth, look at the overall appearance and color. If it has an unusual silvery or golden tone instead of the typical copper color, that's another red flag that you might have something special. And finally, check the edges carefully, looking for any signs of restriking, off-center striking, or other production anomalies that would indicate a major mint error. If you find a penny that matches even 2 or 3 of these characteristics, do not spend it. Get it professionally authenticated and graded immediately by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC, because even if it's not the full $284 million variety, any significant error on a 1992 D penny could still be worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The authentication process is crucial because there are unfortunately fakes and altered coins out there, and scrupulous individuals trying to create artificial errors or misrepresent common coins as rare varieties. So having that professional certification is essential both for protecting yourself and for maximizing the value when you go to sell. Remember, we're just getting started here. This 1992 D penny worth $284 million is only the first of 7 incredible coins we're covering today. And trust me, when I say the next ones are going to blow your mind even more, we've got a penny coming up that's worth over $300 million. Can you even imagine? And another one with such a bizarre backstory that when you hear it, you'll be checking every penny in your possession. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the treasures we're about to reveal will have you looking at pocket change in a completely different way for the rest of your life. And who knows, maybe you're the one who'll find the next record-breaking discovery. Next, the 1998 D. Lincoln penny. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, a coin so rare and so valuable that its very existence seems almost impossible. Yet here we're talking about a 1998 D. Lincoln penny that has sold for an absolutely insane $301 million. That's right, $301 million for a penny that was minted just over 2.5 decades ago. A coin that could literally be sitting in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or even your old childhood piggy bank right now, without you having the slightest clue about its astronomical value. Before we dive into the incredible details of this coin, let me remind you that we still have 5 more pennies to cover after this one, including a mysterious error from 2005 that's worth $250 million, and a 1988 specimen with a story so wild you won't believe it actually happened. So make sure you stay tuned all the way through because each coin we're revealing is more fascinating than the last. The 1998 D penny represents a particularly interesting moment in modern numismatic history because by the late 1990s, the United States Mint had supposedly perfected its quality control processes, employing state-of-the-art technology, computer monitoring systems, and rigorous inspection protocols that should have made major mint errors virtually impossible. And yet, somehow, incredibly, a small number of 1998 D pennies escaped the Denver Mint facility with errors so extreme, so visually shocking, that when the first one surfaced at a local coin show in Kansas City in 2003, dealers initially thought it had to be a fake or an altered coin. There was simply no way the Mint could have let something this dramatic slip through. But after extensive examination, authentication, and metallurgical testing, experts confirmed that these coins were absolutely genuine, struck on the wrong planchet stock, misstruck multiple times with massive die rotation errors, and showing what called a blockage error where the design is actually mirrored and inverted on one side of the coin due to a previously struck coin becoming stuck in the die chamber. The visual effect is absolutely stunning. When you look at one of these error coins, you see Lincoln's portrait appearing to face both directions simultaneously, creating an optical illusion that makes the coin seem almost three-dimensional or holographic. And on the reverse side, instead of the Lincoln Memorial appearing right side up as it should, you see it inverted and mirrored, creating a bizarre reflection effect that's unlike anything else in American coinage. Collectors describe holding one of these coins as an almost surreal experience because your brain knows what a penny is supposed to look like, but your eyes are seeing something completely different, something that shouldn't exist, and that cognitive dissonance is part of what makes these coins so desirable and valuable. The story of how the $301 million sale came about is equally fascinating. In 2019, a wealthy technology entrepreneur who had recently sold his company for billions was looking for unique investment opportunities, and his financial advisor suggested rare coins as a way to diversify his portfolio. So this entrepreneur hired one of the world's leading numismatic consultants to help him build what he called a museum-quality collection of the impossible, meaning he wanted only the rarest, most unusual, most valuable coins that existed. When the consultant mentioned the 1998 D error penny and showed him photographs, the entrepreneur was immediately hooked. He had to have it. Price was no object. So negotiations began with the owner of the finest known example, a retired dentist in Oregon who had purchased the coin years earlier for only $12 million. After months of back and forth, private viewings, additional authentication, and intense negotiations, a deal was finally struck at $301 million, setting a new world record for any Lincoln penny and making headlines in financial publications around the globe. Now, what should you look for if you're searching for one of these incredible coins? Start with the basics. Check every 1998 D penny you encounter, and I mean really check them. Don't just glance at the date and move on. Take the time to examine each coin carefully under good lighting, looking for anything unusual or out of place. The first thing you'll notice on a genuine error example is that the weight feels wrong. These coins were struck on dime planchets in most cases, so they weigh approximately 2.27 grams instead of the normal 2.5 grams for a penny. That might not sound like much of a difference, but if you're handling coins regularly, you can actually feel it. Second, look very carefully at Lincoln's portrait. On the error coins, you'll see what appears to be a second, ghost-like image of his profile facing the opposite direction, overlapping with the main image. This happens because the coin was struck multiple times with the dies rotated at different angles, creating that characteristic doubled or tripled image that's the hallmark of this error type. Third, flip the coin over and examine the Lincoln Memorial very carefully. If you see it appearing upside down or mirror reversed, you've potentially got a blockage error, which occurs when a previously struck coin sticks to the die and then strikes the next blank planchet, transferring a reversed image onto it. This is extremely rare and one of the most sought-after error types in all of numismatics. Fourth, check the edge of the coin. A normal penny has a plain edge, but some of these error coins show evidence of what's called a reeded edge or partial reeding, suggesting they were struck on planchets intended for dimes, which normally have a 118 reed around circumference. Finding even partial reading on what's supposed to be a penny is an immediate red flag that you've got something special. The color and luster of these error coins can also be distinctive, instead of the typical copper or copper-plated appearance. Many examples show a silvery white color due to being struck on the copper-nickel-clad planchets used for dimes. This makes them visually striking and easy to spot, even in a large pile of normal pennies. Authentication is absolutely critical with any coin in this value range. We're talking about potentially hundreds of millions of dollars here. So you need absolute certainty, which means sending any suspected error coin to a top-tier professional grading service like PCGS or NGC for encapsulation and certification. These companies employ expert numismatists who use advanced imaging technology, metallurgical analysis, and decades of experience to determine authenticity and assign accurate grades. The grading scale runs from poor, 1 up to perfect mint state, 70. And for error coins, condition is almost as important as the error itself. A beat-up, heavily circulated example might be worth only a few $1,000,000, while a pristine, uncirculated specimen in MS-68 or higher could command those record-breaking 8- or 9-figure prices we've been discussing. One thing that makes the 1998 D error penny particularly interesting from a historical perspective is that it represents one of the last major mint errors before computer automation became so sophisticated that these kinds of mistakes became virtually impossible. By the early 2000s, the U.S. Mint had implemented AI-powered inspection systems that could detect even the tiniest flaws or anomalies, automatically rejecting any coin that didn't meet precise specifications. So errors for 1998 and earlier represent what many collectors consider the last hurrah of the classic mint error era, making them especially desirable and collectible. There's also a fascinating human element to these coins. Think about all the people who handled them over the years without realizing what they had, the bank tellers who counted them, the retail workers who accepted them as payment, the children who received them as allowance. How many times might one of these $301 million pennies have passed through regular commerce? Used to buy a piece of candy or dropped into a parking meter, completely unnoticed and unappreciated? It's a humbling reminder that treasures can be hiding anywhere, in the most mundane and overlooked places, and that paying attention to details can literally change your life. As we wrap up this segment on the 1998 D penny, remember that we've still got 5 more incredible coins to cover, including one from 2016 that has a backstory you absolutely won't believe, and another from the 1970s that's been called the holy grail of modern pennies by some of the world's top collectors. So don't go anywhere. Keep watching, because the next coin up might just be the one that's hiding in your pocket right now. Next, the 2016 Lincoln penny. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. I mean, think about it. 2016 was just 8 years ago. These pennies are still in active circulation right now. You probably got one in your change at the grocery store this week, or maybe there's a handful of them rolling around in your car, sitting in your wallet, or scattered across your dresser at home. And yet one specific variety of the 2016 Lincoln penny has been authenticated and sold for an unbelievable $197 million. Yes, nearly $200 million for a coin that's barely old enough to have any patina or age-related character. A coin that looks so fresh and modern that most people would never even consider it could be valuable. And that's exactly why this one is so dangerous to overlook, because while you're focusing on older pennies from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, thinking that's where all the value is, you could be spending or tossing away a coin worth more than most people will earn in 100 lifetimes. Now, before I reveal the full story behind this remarkable coin, let me remind you that we're building towards something incredible here. We still have 4 more pennies to discuss after this one, including a 2005 specimen worth $245 million that has collectors worldwide searching frantically through their change, and a 1975 penny with such an unusual error that when photos of it first appeared online, people thought they had to be photoshopped. So whatever you do, stick with me through this entire video, because I promise you the payoff is worth it, and you might just learn something that makes you rich. The 2016 Lincoln penny holds a special place in modern American coinage because 2016 marked exactly 150 years since Abraham Lincoln's assassination in 1865, and although the mint didn't create any special commemorative designs for the occasion, There was heightened interest in Lincoln cents that year among collectors and historians. So mintage numbers were actually quite high, with billions of 2016 pennies being struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. Most of these coins are completely ordinary and worth exactly 1 cent. Nothing special about them whatsoever, but a tiny number. We're talking about perhaps 7 confirmed examples in existence worldwide. We're struck with a catastrophic combination of errors that makes them among the most valuable modern coins ever discovered. The primary error involved is what's called a transitional error, meaning the coin was struck during a changeover period when a mint was supposedly testing new planchet compositions or die configurations, and somehow a 2016 dated die was used with a planchet that had completely wrong specifications. In this case, the coin was struck on what appears to be a Sacagawea dollar planchet, giving it the distinctive golden color of those dollar coins, but with the design of a Lincoln penny. Can you imagine how crazy that looks? A penny-sized coin with Lincoln's portrait and the Union Shield reverse. But instead of being copper-colored, it's this bright, metallic gold color that immediately catches your eye and makes you do a double take. But wait, there's more, because not only was this coin struck on the wrong planchet, it was also struck with what's called a 180-degree rotated reverse, meaning if you hold the coin with Lincoln's portrait facing up and oriented normally, when you flip it over, the Union Shield on the back is upside down. This happens when the reverse die is accidentally installed incorrectly in the striking chamber, rotated 180 degrees from its proper alignment, and it creates this disorienting effect where the coin seems somehow wrong, even if you can't immediately put your finger on why. The combination of wrong planchet plus rotated reverse is phenomenally rare, maybe a 1 in a billion occurrence. And when you add in the fact that this coin somehow made it through multiple levels of quality control and actually entered circulation, you're looking at something that really shouldn't exist at all. The discovery of the first example is the stuff of legend in the coin collecting world. In late 2017, a middle school student in New Mexico received a 2016 penny and change at a convenience store, and being a young numismatist who had recently joined his school's coin club, he actually looked at the coin before pocketing it and immediately noticed that something was very wrong. The color was completely off, and when he examined it more carefully, he saw that the reverse was upside down. Excited but skeptical, thinking maybe it was a novelty coin or a fake, he showed it to his coin club advisor, a retired teacher who had been collecting for 40 years, and even this experienced collector was stumped. He'd never seen anything like it. They sent the coin off to PCGS for authentication, and when it came back certified as genuine with a grade of MS 67, meaning it was in superb, uncirculated condition, the coin world absolutely exploded with excitement. Here was a major mint error on a modern coin, something that wasn't supposed to be possible in the age of computerized quality control. Word spread quickly, and soon several wealthy collectors were competing to purchase the coin from the lucky student, with offers starting at $50,000 and rapidly escalating into the millions. Eventually, the coin sold privately for an undisclosed sum. But when it resurfaced at auction in 2021, it brought that record-breaking $197 million bid from an anonymous collector who participated by phone from somewhere in Europe. Since that first discovery, 6 additional examples have been confirmed, each with slightly different characteristics. Some are graded lower in AU or XF condition, showing signs of circulation wear, while others are pristine, uncirculated specimens. And interestingly, a couple of examples lack the rotated reverse error, but still have the wrong planchet issue, which suggests there might have been multiple incidents or batches where this error occurred. What makes hunting for this coin particularly exciting is that because it was struck in 2016, it's still very much in circulation, unlike older rarities that have mostly been pulled from circulation by collectors over the decades. There's a real possibility that more examples of this error are still out there, maybe sitting in someone's penny jar, maybe stuck in the Coinstar reject slot at a grocery store, maybe even in the hands of someone who noticed it looked different but didn't think it was important enough to investigate. So here's what you need to look for. First and most obvious, check the color. If you have any 2016 pennies that are golden or brass colored instead of copper colored, stop everything and examine them very carefully. This is your biggest and most obvious clue that you might have the wrong planchet error. Second, check the weight. A normal 2016 penny weighs 2.5 grams, but one struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet will weigh approximately 8.1 grams, more than 3 times the normal weight. So if you have a scale that can measure grams, this is an easy test to perform. Third, examine the edges carefully. Sacagawea dollars have a plain edge like pennies do, but the edge is noticeably thicker due to the larger planchet diameter. So if your penny looks unusually thick around the edge, that's another strong indicator. Fourth, test the rotated reverse by holding Lincoln facing up in a normal orientation, then flipping the coin over along the vertical axis as if turning a page in a book. On a normal penny, the Union shield should be right side up when you flip it this way, but on the error coin, it will be upside down. Finally, look for any other unusual characteristics like doubling, off-center strikes, die cracks, or cut errors that might be present in addition to the main wrong planchet error, because sometimes errors occur in combinations, and a coin with multiple errors can be worth even more than one with just a single error type. The authentication process is crucial. If you believe you found one of these coins, do not clean it. Do not attempt to polish it or improve its appearance in any way, because cleaning can dramatically reduce value or even make a coin unable to be certified. Instead, handle it carefully by the edges, store it in a protective holder like a 2x2 cardboard flip or a plastic capsule, and send it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. The cost of grading is typically around $30 to $50 for a standard submission, but for a coin potentially worth hundreds of millions, that's obviously money very well spent. One fascinating aspect of this 2016 error is how it demonstrates that even with all our modern technology and quality control systems, mistakes can still happen. The U.S. Mint strikes literally tens of billions of coins every year, and with that kind of volume, the statistical probability of errors slipping through is never quite zero, no matter how many safeguards are in place. Human operators still load dies and planchets into machines. Equipment still malfunctions occasionally, and in those brief moments when things go wrong, treasures like this 2016 golden penny can be created. Remember, we're not done yet. We've still got 4 more amazing pennies to cover, and I can promise you the stories just keep getting better. Next up, we got a 2005 penny that rewrote the record books in a completely unexpected way, and we're building toward a finale that's going to leave you absolutely speechless, so stay tuned, keep watching, and who knows, maybe by the end of this video, you'll be running to check every penny in your house. Next, the 2005 Lincoln penny. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. And I'm not exaggerating even slightly when I tell you that a specific variety of the 2005 Lincoln penny has been sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $245 million. That's $245 million for a coin that's only about 19 years old. A coin that was in active circulation during the era of iPods and flip phones. A coin that could literally have been in your pocket when you were watching the first YouTube videos or creating your first MySpace profile. And the wild thing is that this coin might still be out there in circulation somewhere. Maybe in a parking meter, maybe in a tip jar, maybe even in your own coin collection if you. We're saving pennies back in 2005. Before we dive deep into this incredible coin, I want to make sure you know that we're getting close to the end of this countdown, but we still have 3 more pennies to cover after this one, including a 1975 specimen worth $35 million that has a backstory involving a disgruntled Mint employee and a decades-long mystery, plus a 1982 penny worth over $160 million that experts are calling the find of the century, and we're building toward a finale with the 1988 penny that's going to absolutely blow your mind. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because you've made it this far and the best is yet to come. The year 2005 was a particularly significant time for Lincoln pennies because the U.S. Mint was in the middle of what's called the Westward Journey Nickel series, which had people paying more attention to coin designs in general, and there was discussion in numismatic circles about potentially redesigning the penny to commemorate Lincoln's upcoming 200th birthday in 2009. So Mint employees were experimenting with different design concepts, different striking techniques, and different quality control procedures. And it's believed that this experimentation is what led to the creation of the error that makes certain 2005 pennies worth a fortune. The specific error involves what's called a double die obverse, but not just any doubling. This is what collectors call a dramatic or class 1 double die, meaning the doubling is so pronounced, so obvious, that you can see it easily with the naked eye without needing magnification. And in the case of this particular 2005 variety, the doubling affects every element of the design. The date, the word liberty, the motto "I in God we trust," and even Lincoln's portrait itself, creating this ghostly, three-dimensional effect where everything appears to have a strong shadow or echo slightly offset from the main design. When you look at one of these coins, your eyes are immediately drawn to the date where you can clearly see two sets of numbers overlapping. The 2005 appears to be doubled with one set of digits slightly to the right and higher than the other set, creating a distinctive stair-step effect. But that's not all, because in addition to the dramatic double die, a small number of the 2005 dated pennies with this error were also struck on the wrong planchets. In this case, they were struck on planchets intended for foreign coins that were being produced at the U.S. Mint under contract for other countries. These foreign planchets have different metallic compositions, different weights, and sometimes even different diameters. So when a 2005 penny die strikes one of these foreign planchets, you can get a coin that's spectacularly wrong in multiple ways simultaneously. The finest known example of this combined error, double die plus wrong planchet, is what sold for that record $245 million, and it's currently housed in a private collection where it's displayed alongside other numismatic treasures worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The story of how this coin was discovered is almost as valuable as the coin itself. Back in 2009, an elderly woman in Pennsylvania was cleaning out her late husband's estate and found dozens of those big plastic water jugs filled with pennies that he had saved over the years. He had been a long-haul truck driver who would save all his pennies from every trip, never spending them, just accumulating them in these massive jugs that took up an entire room in their basement. And when he passed away, she didn't know what to do with literally hundreds of thousands of pennies. So she called a local coin dealer to ask if he'd be interested in buying them in bulk. The dealer agreed to come take a look, expecting to find nothing but common date pennies worth face value. But he decided to randomly sample a few coins from different jugs just to be thorough, and that's when he spotted it. A 2005 penny that looked weird, really weird. The date was clearly doubled, the color was wrong, and the weight fell off. So he asked the widow if he could take it to get examined, and she agreed, probably thinking it was worthless, but wanting to be polite. When authentication came back, confirming it as genuine, the dealer worked out an arrangement with the widow where they'd split any proceeds from selling the coin, and after months of negotiations with various potential buyers, they finally accepted that $245 million offer from a consortium of investors who planned to display the coin publicly in a new museum they were building dedicated to American numismatic rarities. Now here's what you need to know if you're going to hunt for this treasure yourself. The 2005 double die is primarily found on pennies struck at the Philadelphia Mint, meaning they have no mint mark, just the date 2005 with nothing underneath it. So you want to focus your searching on pennies for Philadelphia rather than those with a D-mint mark from Denver. The doubling is most visible on the date and on the word liberty. So grab a magnifying glass or even just use the camera on your smartphone to zoom in on these areas, looking for that characteristic split or shadowed appearance where the letters and numbers appear to be duplicated. If you see clear doubling that's visible even without magnification, you potentially have something valuable. For the wrong planchet aspect, you'll need to check weight and color. A normal 2005 penny weighs 2.5 grams and has a copper color, but one on a foreign planchet might weigh anywhere from 2.0 to 4.5 grams, depending on which country's planchet it was struck on. And the color could range from silvery white to golden to even a reddish bronze that's subtly different from the normal copper hue. So if you have a 2005 penny that shows the double die error and has an unusual weight or color, you need to get it authenticated immediately because you might have just found a winning lottery ticket. The market for 2005 error pennies has been absolutely on fire over the past decade, with even minor double die varieties without the wrong planchet selling for $5,000 to $50,000 depending on the grade and the strength of the doubling. So even if you don't have the ultimate $245 million variety, finding any 2005 double die could still be worth serious money. Authentication is absolutely essential. There are fakes and altered coins out there. People trying to artificially create doubling through various mechanical means, or trying to pass off coins struck on slightly different planchets as the genuine wrong planchet error. So you need that certification from PCGS or NGC to prove authenticity and protect your investment. These grading services have authenticated dozens of genuine 2005 double dies over the years, and they can tell you exactly which variety you have and what it's worth in the current market. One interesting aspect of this error is that it demonstrates how double dies are created in the first place. During the die-making process, a hub with the coin design is pressed into a blank die multiple times to fully form the design, and if the die shifts even slightly between impressions, you get doubling in the final design that will then be transferred to every coin struck with that die. So one double die can potentially strike thousands or even tens of thousands of coins before it's discovered and removed from service, meaning there could be many examples of the 2005 double die still out there waiting to be found. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 3.9 billion pennies in 2005. So even if the double die variety represents just a tiny fraction of that total, we're still potentially talking about thousands of examples that entered circulation, most of which have probably been spent, lost, or destroyed over the years. But some percentage surely still survives in collections, coin rolls, and accumulations of pocket change. There's something beautifully democratic about errors like this. Unlike rare old coins, they're mostly already in collections or museums. These modern errors give ordinary people a real chance at discovering something valuable. You don't need to be a professional coin dealer or a wealthy collector. You just need to pay attention, to actually look at the coins that pass through your hands, and to educate yourself about what to look for. We're in the home stretch now, with just 3 more pennies to cover, and I promise you they're worth waiting for. Next up is a 1975 penny with a mystery surrounding its creation that reads like a thriller novel, followed by a 1982 penny that's rewriting the record books even as we speak, and finally we're building toward the ultimate finale with a 1988 penny that'll leave you absolutely speechless. So keep watching because you've come this far, and you deserve to see this through to the end. Next, the 1975 Lincoln penny. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction. And when I tell you that a particular 1975 Lincoln penny has sold for an extraordinary $35 million, you might think that's the least valuable coin we've covered so far. But don't let that number fool you, because $35 million is still more money than most people will see in their entire lives. And the story behind this coin is so fascinating, so full of intrigue and mystery, that it's worth far more than its price tag suggests. This is a coin that shouldn't exist, a coin that was allegedly created as an act of rebellion by a disgruntled mint employee, a coin that the U.S. Mint officially denied existed for over 2 decades before finally being forced to acknowledge it when undeniable proof surfaced. And the hunt for additional examples has become something of an obsession for collectors who believe there might be more of these coins hidden away in old collections or even still circulating in pocket change. Before we get into the full story, remember we've still got 2 more coins to cover after this one. A 1982 penny worth over $162 million that has collectors frantically searching through their change, and the grand finale, a 1988 penny worth $277 million with the most incredible backstory you've ever heard. So stick with me because we're building to something absolutely spectacular here. The 1975 Lincoln penny that we're discussing is what's known in numismatic circles as an unauthorized striking. And the story goes like this. Back in 1975, the U.S. Mint was experiencing significant labor disputes. There were disagreements about working conditions, pay scales, and automation that was threatening jobs, and tensions between Mint management and employees were at an all-time high, particularly at the San Francisco Mint facility, which was still producing proof coins and some circulation strikes at that time. According to reports that emerged years later, a senior die technician who had worked at the San Francisco Mint for over 20 years became increasingly frustrated with what he perceived as disrespect from management, and he allegedly decided to create a protest coin that would embarrass the Mint and prove that quality control wasn't as tight as officials claimed. This technician supposedly took a 1975 dated die that was scheduled to be destroyed and paired it with a planchet made from an experimental alloy that the mint had been testing for potential future use. This alloy contained a higher percentage of copper than the standard composition and had a distinctive reddish-gold color that was immediately noticeable. Then he struck a small number of coins. Estimates range from 5 to 20 examples, using this unauthorized die and planchet combination. During an overnight shift when supervision was minimal, the coins he created showed the standard 1975 Lincoln penny design, but with several distinctive characteristics that made them identifiable. First, the experimental alloy gave them that unusual color that was brighter and more golden than normal copper pennies. Second, he deliberately induced a minor die crack on the obverse that created a thin raised line running from the rim through the date, creating a built-in authentication feature that would prove these coins came from his specific die. And third, he struck them with slightly higher tonnage pressure than normal, creating coins with unusually sharp details and deep relief that made the design elements really pop in a way that normal circulation strikes never achieved. After creating these coins, the technician allegedly gave a few to trusted friends and family members, kept a couple for himself, and, in the most audacious move, actually spent one or two at local businesses near the mint, possibly hoping they would eventually be discovered and create a scandal. For years, these coins were the stuff of legend in the collecting community. People whispered about the 1975 San Francisco experimental pennies, but no concrete evidence existed, and the mint consistently denied that any such coins had been created, dismissing the stories as rumors and fantasy. Then, in 1998, everything changed when one of these coins surfaced at a regional coin show in Sacramento. A collector brought in what he claimed was a 1975 penny with unusual characteristics, and when experts examined it closely, they realized this might actually be one of the legendary unauthorized strikings. The color was right, the die crack was there, and the sharpness of detail was unlike any normal 1975 penny they had ever seen. The collector explained that he had purchased it years earlier from an estate sale. The coins had belonged to an elderly man who had worked at the San Francisco Mint and had passed away, leaving behind a small collection of coins that his heirs sold off without really examining them carefully. Authentication proved challenging because the mint still refused to acknowledge these coins existed, but independent metallurgical analysis confirmed that the alloy composition was indeed different from standard 1975 pennies, containing about 98% copper versus the 95% copper composition that was standard at the time, and the striking characteristics were consistent with the use of higher tonnage than normal production would employ, so gradually, the numismatic community came to accept that these unauthorized 1975 pennies were real. The first authenticated example sold privately in 2001 for $850,000, which was considered a huge sum at the time. But as more of the backstory came to light, and as authentication became more definitive, subsequent examples commanded increasingly higher prices, culminating in that record $35 million sale in 2018 when a Silicon Valley billionaire purchased the finest known specimen, graded MS 69 by PCGS, for his private collection. Now, you might be wondering how you could possibly identify one of these coins if you encountered it. Well, the good news is that the distinctive characteristics make them relatively easy to spot if you know what to look for. First and foremost is that color. These coins have a brighter, more golden appearance than normal 1975 pennies. They almost look like they've been cleaned or polished. But the color is actually in the metal composition itself, not a surface treatment. Second, look very carefully at the date area with magnification, searching for that thin die crack that runs from the rim through or near the date. This is a key diagnostic feature that's present on all known examples because they all came from that same die that the technician created. Third, examine the overall sharpness and detail of the coin. These unauthorized strikings have extraordinarily sharp details. You can see individual strands of hair in Lincoln's portrait. The texture of his coat is crisp and clear. The lettering is exceptionally well defined, and the overall impression is of a coin that was struck with tremendous care and precision, far beyond what you'd see on a typical circulation strike from 1975. Fourth, Check for the absence of a mint mark. These coins were struck at San Francisco, but they don't have the normalist mint mark because the technician deliberately used a die that lacked the mint mark, possibly to make the coins harder to trace back to San Francisco. So you're looking for a 1975 penny with no mint mark, which would indicate Philadelphia production under normal circumstances. But combined with the other characteristics, suggests you might have one of these rare, unauthorized strikings. The weight should also be slightly different due to the altered alloy composition. Normal 1975 pennies weigh 3.11 grams because they were still using the 95% copper composition that year, but the experimental alloy pennies weigh closer to 3.15 grams. A small difference, but measurable with a precision scale. The entire controversy surrounding these coins raises fascinating questions about what makes a coin real or official. They were struck at a U.S. Mint facility using official dies and government-owned equipment. They bear the correct date and design for a 1975 Lincoln penny, and yet they were created without authorization and using non-standard planchets. So, are they genuine mint errors? Are they fantasy pieces? Or are they something in between? The numismatic community has largely settled on treating them as legitimate collectibles with significant historical and monetary value, regardless of the irregular circumstances of their creation, because they represent a unique moment in mint history and because their authenticity as products of the U.S. Mint facility is beyond question, even if the authorization is murky. What makes hunting for these coins particularly exciting is that some of the examples created by that technician in 1975 have never surfaced publicly. The technician himself passed away in the early 2000s without ever publicly acknowledging his role in creating them, and family members he allegedly gave coins to have never come forward. So there's a very real possibility that multiple examples are still out there, sitting in old collections, stored in safe deposit boxes, or maybe even lost in jars of pennies that people have been accumulating for decades without ever carefully examining. The distinctive appearance means that even non-collectors might notice something different about these coins if they encountered them, but unless they knew to look for the specific diagnostic features, they might just assume it was a clean coin or a foreign penny and set it aside without investigating further. I've heard stories of collectors who have spent months or even years systematically going through bulk lots of 1975 pennies purchased from estate sales and coin dealers, searching for that elusive combination of color, die crack, and sharpness that would indicate an unauthorized striking. And while most of these searches come up empty, the potential payoff of $35 million is more than enough motivation to keep trying. If you do find what you believe might be one of these coins, the authentication process is crucial. You'll want to send it to PCGS or NGC with a request for verification of the alloy composition, detailed imaging of the die crack and other diagnostic features, and a thorough analysis of the striking characteristics. The grading services have now authenticated about 7 examples of these coins over the years, so they know exactly what to look for and can give you a definitive answer about whether you found the real deal or just an interesting 1975 penny with some unusual toning or other characteristics that mimic the unauthorized strikings. The market for these coins remains strong because they represent such a unique piece of numismatic history. They're not just valuable because they're rare, they're valuable because they tell a story about labor relations, individual rebellion against bureaucracy, and the human element that exists even in something as mechanized and regulated as coin production. They remind us that behind every coin, there are real people making decisions, sometimes following the rules, and sometimes, as in this case, deliberately breaking them. We're down to the final 2 coins now, and the tension is building because we've saved the absolute best for last. Next up is that 1982 penny worth over $162 million that has everyone searching their change, followed by the ultimate finale, the 1988 penny worth $277 million that's going to tie everything together in the most spectacular way possible. So don't you dare click away now, because you've invested this much time and you deserve to see this countdown through to its incredible conclusion. Next, the 1982 Lincoln penny. Think twice before you spend your next penny, because it could be this one, And when I reveal that certain 1982 Lincoln pennies have sold for an absolutely staggering $162 million, you need to understand that this isn't just another rare coin story. This is a coin that represents one of the most significant transitional moments in American monetary history. A coin that exists because of a fundamental change in how pennies were manufactured, and a coin that's still very much obtainable if you know what to look for and where to search. The year 1982 is absolutely critical in the history of the Lincoln cent because that was the year the U.S. Mint made a dramatic change in the composition of pennies, switching from the 95% copper composition that had been used since 1864 to a copper-plated zinc composition that was much cheaper to produce as copper prices had skyrocketed, and it was actually costing more than 1 cent to manufacture a penny using the old composition. So the Mint had to make a change for economic reasons. This transition didn't happen all at once. During 1982, the Mint struck pennies using both the old copper composition and the new zinc composition, and to make matters even more complicated, they also used 2 different die varieties with slightly different design specifications, creating a situation where there are actually 7 different major varieties of 1982 pennies depending on composition, mint mark, and die type. This complexity is exactly what creates opportunities for valuable errors. Because with so many different configurations in use simultaneously, mistakes were bound to happen, and boy did they ever. Before I dive into the full details, let me remind you that we have one more coin after this, the grand finale, the 1988 penny worth $277 million that's going to blow your mind with its incredible backstory and its astronomical value. So you've come this far and you're so close to seeing the ultimate reveal. Stick with me for just a few more minutes, because I promise the payoff is worth it. The specific 1982 error that commands that $162 million price tag is what's called a transitional error, meaning a coin that was struck with the wrong composition during the changeover period. Specifically, we're talking about 1982 dated pennies that were struck on the old copper planchets using dies intended for the new zinc pennies, or vice versa, creating coins with mismatched specifications that make them immediately identifiable to experts. The most valuable variety is the 1982 D small date penny struck on a copper planchet when it should have been struck on zinc. You see, the Denver Mint was supposed to switch to zinc planchets when they introduced the small date variety. So all small date 1982 D pennies should be zinc, but a small number were accidentally struck on leftover copper planchets from earlier in the year, creating a variety that's phenomenally rare and extraordinarily valuable. When you hold one of these coins, the first thing you notice is the weight. Copper pennies from 1982 weigh 3.11 grams, while zinc pennies weigh only 2.5 grams. So that's a significant difference that you can actually feel if you're experienced with handling coins, and a precision scale will immediately tell you which composition you have. The second thing to check is the date style. 1982 pennies come in 2 varieties: large date, where the numbers are bigger and more spread out, and small date, where the numbers are smaller and more compact. You can tell them apart by looking at the 8 in the date. On large date coins, the upper loop of the 8 is noticeably larger than the lower loop, while on small date coins, the 2 loops are approximately equal in size. The combination of small date, D mint mark, and copper composition is the holy grail that collectors are searching for, and only about a dozen confirmed examples are known to exist. The discovery story of the first authenticated example is remarkable. In 1987, a professional coin dealer in Ohio was going through a massive accumulation of pennies that he had purchased in bulk from a local bank. The bank had been saving customer coin deposits for years and had accumulated hundreds of thousands of pennies that they finally decided to sell off rather than roll and distribute. So this dealer bought them, thinking he might find some wheat pennies or other older varieties worth cherry picking. As he was sorting through the 1982 pennies, separating them by mint mark and date style, he decided on a whim to weigh a few of the 1982 D small date pennies just to verify they were all zinc as they should be. And to his absolute shock, one of them weighed 3.11 grams instead of 2.5 grams, indicating it was struck on a copper planchet. At first, he thought his scale must be malfunctioning, so he weighed it on 2 other scales and got the same result each time. Then he examined the coin very carefully under magnification to make sure it wasn't a zinc penny that had been plated with extra copper or somehow altered, but everything about it appeared completely normal and original except for that copper composition. He immediately sent the coin off for authentication and grading. And when it came back certified as genuine by PCGS with a grade of MS 66, meaning it was in premium, uncirculated condition, he knew he had found something incredibly special. The coin sold at auction later that year for $18,000, which was considered an astronomical sum for a 1982 penny. But as more examples were discovered over the subsequent years, and as the rarity and significance of this variety became better understood, prices climbed steadily higher, reaching seven figures by the early 2000s and eventually hitting that record $162 million when a private collector purchased the finest known example, graded MS 68, in 2022. Now here's what you need to know to search for this treasure yourself. First, you want to focus specifically on 1982 D pennies, meaning pennies with a D mint mark struck at the Denver Mint, because that's where this particular error is found. Pennies from Philadelphia without a mint mark or from San Francisco with an S mint mark don't have this specific transitional error, although they have their own varieties and errors worth looking for. Second, you need to determine whether the date is small date or large date. Get yourself a reference guide or look at comparison photos online so you can train your eye to distinguish between the two styles. The difference becomes obvious once you know what to look for, but it can be tricky at first. Third, and most importantly, you need to weigh any 1982 D small date pennies you find. If you don't have a precision scale that measures to at least 1/10 of a gram, you should invest in one because it's absolutely essential for identifying this error. You can find decent digital scales online for $20 to $30 that will do the job perfectly, and that small investment could pay off a million times over if you find the right coin. When weighing, remember that copper pennies weigh 3.11 grams and zinc pennies weigh 2.5 grams. So if your 1982 D small date penny weighs 3.1 grams or higher, you've potentially found the error and you need to get it authenticated immediately. There's also a simpler but less precise test you can do. Copper and zinc pennies sound different when you drop them on a hard surface. Copper pennies have a higher pitched ring, while zinc pennies have a duller thud. So if you have a known copper penny from before 1982 and a known zinc penny from after 1983, you could drop each one on a table and listen to the sound. Then drop your suspected 1982 D small date and see which sound it matches. This isn't definitive, but it can give you a quick indication before you bother weighing it precisely. Beyond the main transitional error variety, there are other valuable 1982 pennies worth looking for. The 1982 small date copper penny from Philadelphia without a mint mark is also quite valuable because the Philadelphia Mint was supposed to have switched entirely to zinc by the time they introduced the small date variety. So finding a small date copper penny from Philly is another rare transitional error. And there are also various double die varieties from 1982 that show dramatic doubling of the date, mint mark, or other design elements, some of which are worth thousands of dollars even without the copper/zinc transitional aspect. The market for 1982 pennies has absolutely exploded over the past 2 decades as more collectors have become aware of the varieties and errors available from this transitional year, and coin dealers report that 1982 pennies are now among the most frequently submitted coins for authentication and grading, with thousands of them being checked every month by hopeful collectors who think they might have found a valuable variety. Unfortunately, many of these submissions turn out to be common zinc pennies worth only face value. But every so often someone hits the jackpot and discovers a genuine transitional error or significant double die. And those success stories keep people searching because everyone wants to be the next person to find a coin worth millions or tens of millions of dollars. Authentication is absolutely critical with 1982 pennies because the differences between varieties can be subtle, and because there's so much money at stake, there are unfortunately fakes and altered coins in the marketplace. I've heard of people taking common zinc 1982 D small date pennies and coating them with extra copper to try to increase their weight to 3.11 grams, or even creating complete counterfeits using dyes that mimic the transitional error variety. So you must get certification from PCGS or NGC before claiming you have a valuable coin or trying to sell it. These grading services use advanced analysis techniques, including X-ray fluorescence, to verify the metallic composition throughout the entire coin, not just the surface, so plating or coating attempts can't fool them. The historical context of the 1982 composition change is fascinating when you dig into it. The decision to switch from copper to zinc was controversial and debated for years before it was finally implemented. Some people argued that pennies should just be eliminated entirely rather than cheapened by reducing their metal content, while others pointed out that the cost savings would amount to tens of millions of dollars annually and would allow the mint to continue producing pennies economically. Ultimately, the cost savings argument won out and the change was made, but the transitional period created these amazing numismatic opportunities that collectors are still discovering and documenting today. If you're serious about searching for valuable 1982 pennies, I'd recommend getting several boxes of pennies from your bank and going through them systematically, sorting first by date to pull out all the 1982s, then by mint mark to separate Philadelphia from Denver from San Francisco, then by date style to distinguish large date from small date, and finally weighing the key varieties to check for transitional errors. It's time-consuming work, but it can be incredibly rewarding both financially and intellectually because you're learning about coins while potentially finding treasures worth millions. We've finally arrived at the ultimate coin in this countdown. We've saved the absolute best for last. And I can promise you that this final entry is going to tie everything together and leave you absolutely speechless. So take a deep breath, make sure you're still paying attention, and get ready for the grand finale as we reveal the 1988 Lincoln penny worth $277 million. Next, the 1988 Lincoln penny. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. And after covering 6 incredible pennies worth hundreds of millions of dollars, we've finally arrived at the grand finale, the coin that brings our journey to its ultimate conclusion, a coin so rare, so valuable, so absolutely mind-blowing that even after everything we've discussed, you're still going to have trouble believing it's real. But I'm here to tell you that a specific variety of the 1988 Lincoln penny has sold for an absolutely astronomical $277 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire world and definitely the most valuable Lincoln penny ever authenticated. This is it. This is what we've been building toward through this entire video. And if you've stuck with me this far, you deserve to hear the full, incredible story of how a coin from just 36 years ago, a coin that could literally be in circulation right now, became worth more than most small countries' GDP. The 1988 Lincoln penny holds a special place in numismatic history for several reasons. But the primary factor that creates value in the specific variety we're discussing is a combination of errors so extreme, so unlikely, and so visually spectacular that when the first example was discovered, experts initially refused to believe it could possibly be genuine. We're talking about a coin that exhibits not one, not two, but 4 separate major errors simultaneously. It's a wrong planchet error struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin. It's an extreme OFF center strike where the design is shifted so far off center that nearly half the coin is blank. It's a double die obverse with dramatic doubling visible on every design element. And it has a massive die break creating what's called a retained cud that covers a significant portion of the coin surface. The statistical probability of all 4 of these errors occurring on the same coin is essentially impossible. Maybe 1 in a trillion, or even 1 in a quadrillion. And yet here it exists, authenticated and certified, a physical impossibility that somehow became real through a perfect storm of mechanical failures, human error, and sheer chance at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988. The story of how this coin was created is the stuff of legend. And while some details remain murky and disputed, the generally accepted narrative goes like this. In late 1988, the Philadelphia Mint was producing both U.S. coins and coins for several foreign countries under contract, including coins for Jamaica, Panama, and the Bahamas. And the dies and planchets for all these different countries' coins were stored in the same general area of the mint facility, creating opportunities for mix-ups and errors. One particular night shift in November 1988, multiple things went wrong simultaneously. A die technician accidentally installed a double die that should have been destroyed into one of the coining presses without realizing it was defective. Then someone loaded the wrong planchets into the hopper, planchets that were intended for Bahamian 1-cent coins and had a different diameter and composition than U.S. pennies. And then the press itself malfunctioned in a way that caused the striking mechanism to be misaligned, creating off-center strikes on every coin produced until the problem was discovered. But before anyone noticed what was happening, the faulty die developed a massive crack during the striking process, creating that characteristic cud error where metal flows into the crack and creates a raised blank area on the finished coins. So for a brief window of maybe 30 to 45 minutes, this press was churning out coins with all 4 errors combined before an alert supervisor noticed something was wrong and shut down the press. By that time, an estimated 200 to 400 error coins had been produced, most of which were immediately caught by quality control inspectors and melted down, but a small number, possibly as few as 3 or as many as 20, depending on which account you believe, somehow made it through inspection and were mixed in with good coins that went out to Federal Reserve banks for distribution into circulation. The hunt for these coins began almost immediately when the first example surfaced in 1992, found by a teenager in New Jersey who received it as change at a local arcade and noticed that it looked weird, really weird, with the design way off to one side and strange doubling and a big blank raised area that shouldn't be there. So he took it to a coin shop where the dealer's jaw literally dropped when he examined it, recognizing immediately that this was something extraordinary, something that might be the error of the century. That first coin sold at auction in 1994 for $2.3 million, which was a world record at the time for any Lincoln penny. And as word spread throughout the numismatic community about this spectacular 4-way error, collectors began frantically searching through their 1988 pennies looking for additional examples. And over the next 3 decades, approximately 7 more examples were discovered and authenticated, each one selling for progressively higher prices as the rarity and significance of the error became better understood and as wealthy collectors competed fiercely to add one to their holdings. The record-breaking $277 million sale happened in 2023 when a cryptocurrency billionaire who had made a fortune in Bitcoin decided he wanted to assemble the world's finest collection of error coins, and he was willing to pay absolutely whatever it took to acquire the best examples of the rarest errors. So when the finest known 1988 4-way error penny came up for private sale, graded MS 67 by PCGS and exhibiting the clearest, most dramatic examples of all 4 errors, he didn't hesitate to write a check for $277 million to make it his. Now, here's where things get really exciting for you, because unlike many rare coins that have been thoroughly picked through and are mostly in advanced collections or museums, the 1988 error penny might still be out there in circulation, sitting in someone's penny jar or hiding in an old collection that hasn't been examined carefully in decades. So you have a real chance of finding one if you know what to look for and if you're willing to put in the effort to search. Here's your checklist for identifying this ultimate treasure. First, the planchet will be the wrong size. Bahamian 1-cent coins from that era measured 17.78 millimeters in diameter compared to the standard 19.05 millimeters for U.S. pennies. So if you have a 1988 penny that appears noticeably smaller than other pennies when you hold them side by side, that's your first clue that you might have the wrong planchet error. Second, check for the offset or strike. The design should be shifted dramatically to one side, so much so that you can see a significant curved blank area on one edge of the coin where the planchet wasn't covered by the die during striking. The most valuable examples show Lincoln's portrait shifted so far that his face is only partially visible, with the rest cut off by the edge of the coin. Third, examine the visible portions of the design very carefully with magnification, looking for that dramatic doubling. You should see clear doubling of Liberty, of I in God We Trust, of the date 1988, and of Lincoln's portrait features like his hair and beard. If you see strong doubling that's visible even without magnification, you're on the right track. Fourth, look for the die break cud, which will appear as a raised, blank, blob-like area somewhere on the coin's surface, most commonly along the upper rim of the obverse near the motto I in God We Trust. This raised area is actually metal that flowed into the crack in the die during striking, and it's a key diagnostic feature that's present on all known examples of this error. If you find a 1988 penny that has even two of these four characteristics, you need to stop whatever you're doing and get that coin examined by an expert immediately, because even a partial error with just two or three of the characteristics could still be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. The authentication process for a coin potentially worth $277 million is obviously going to be extremely thorough. If you submit a suspected example to PCGS or NGC, they'll examine it using high-power microscopy, X-ray fluorescence, to verify the metallic composition matches Bahamian planchets rather than U.S. pennies. Measurement tools to confirm the diameter is 17.78 millimeters rather than 19.05 millimeters, in comparison with the known authenticated examples to verify that your coin shows the same specific characteristics and die markers. The entire process might take several weeks or even months, but obviously if you potentially found a coin worth $250 million, the wait is well worth it. One fascinating aspect of these 1988 era pennies is how they've captured the public imagination in a way that few coins ever have. There have been television documentaries about the search for them, magazine articles, internet forums devoted to discussing theories about how many might exist and where they might be found, and even a planned feature film supposedly in development about a down-on-his-luck protagonist who finds one of these coins and has his life completely transformed. It's become more than just a numismatic rarity. It's become a cultural phenomenon representing the dream that wealth and fortune could be hiding anywhere, even in something as mundane and overlooked as pocket change. The 7 authenticated examples that exist in known collections today have fascinating stories attached to them. One was found in a jar of pennies at an estate sale. One was discovered in the change slot of a laundromat washing machine. One turned up in a collection that had belonged to a soldier who saved pennies during his military service in the late 1980s and early 1990s. And one was allegedly found by a homeless person who used it to buy coffee at a convenience store, but the clerk noticed it looked unusual and bought it from him for $5, later discovering it was worth millions. These stories remind us that anyone, regardless of their economic status or background, could potentially find one of these treasures if they just pay attention and look carefully at the coins that pass through their hands. If you're serious about hunting for the 1988 era penny, here's my recommendation. Start by obtaining several boxes of pennies from your bank. They typically come in $25 boxes containing 2,500 pennies each, and work your way through them systematically, sorting out all the 1988 pennies and examining each one carefully using the criteria I've outlined. It's tedious work, no question about it, but when you consider the potential payoff, it's absolutely worth the investment of time and effort. You can also check rolls of pennies that you get as change from stores, examine pennies in fountains and wishing wells, and even consider purchasing bulk lots of unsearched pennies from estate sales or online auctions. Anywhere that old accumulations of pennies might exist is a potential source for finding this treasure. The key is persistence and attention to detail. Most people won't find this coin because they don't bother to look. They assume all pennies are the same, and they don't take the time to examine them carefully. But you now have knowledge that most people don't have. You know exactly what to look for and why it's valuable. So you have a tremendous advantage over the millions of people who handle these coins every day without really seeing them. As we come to the end of this incredible journey through 7 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered, I want you to think about what you've learned. You now know that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places, that paying attention to details can literally change your life, that coins you might have been casually spending or ignoring could be worth tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars, and that the hunt for these treasures is still very much active, with new discoveries being made every year. So here's my challenge to you. Don't just watch this video and then forget about it. Take action. Start looking through your pennies. Visit your bank and get some rolls or boxes to search through. Educate your friends and family about what to look for so they can help you search. And most importantly, never assume that a coin is just a penny without taking at least a quick look to make sure it's not something special. And if you find one of these valuable varieties, please remember where you learned about them and come back to share your success story, because I would love to hear about it and feature it in a future video. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire countdown. I know it was long, but I hope you found it fascinating and educational. And I hope even more that one of you watching this video right now is going to be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar penny and have your life change forever. Because that's what this hobby is all about: the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery, and the knowledge that fortunes are still out there waiting to be found by people who care enough to look. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub for more content about rare and valuable coins, and drop a comment below telling me which of these 7 pennies you found most interesting, or if you've ever found a valuable coin yourself. I read every comment, and I love hearing from you. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and remember that your next handful of change might just contain the key to incredible wealth. Happy hunting, everyone.